I'm a 35-year-old man, and for some backstory, my dad died when I was 19, leaving my mom with me and my two siblings. I'm the oldest. It took some time, but eventually, my mom started dating again. We don't live together per se, but our houses back onto each other and have a gate, so it's pretty common for her to offer to do my laundry, or for me to just go over for dinner or look after our dog, that kind of stuff. Plus, my siblings and I go over there for dinner every other Friday night or so. A bit after she started, the men she's been dating have been getting younger and younger, and I've never had a problem with them. She's been very open to me and my siblings that she wants to get married again, and we've always been supportive, at least after the initial shocks. The latest guy is by far the most serious, and they've been dating since around last June. He proposed at the start of autumn, and they want to get married next summer. Again, my siblings and I are fine with this because it's her life, and we trust him. He's a nice guy, and they clearly love each other. But anyway, so long and short is, this weekend, her fiancé, let's call him Phil, calls me and asks if I could come over. I say, yeah, sure, I'll be over after work, and I assumed he just needed help with some DIY stuff they're doing. When I get over there, he calls me Sport and says we need to talk. I should mention this is something he does to me and my little brother, calling us things like kid, sport, scout, little buddy, or my personal favorite, calling us red and blue seemingly out of nowhere. My brother is 30, by the way. He tried it with my little sister, 28 too, once and called her princess once, but he stopped when she just stared at him. So, the thing with Phil is that he reminds me a lot of Charlie Day's character in Horrible Bosses, in that his sole ambition has always been to meet a girl, get married, and have a family. When he told me and my brother this, my brother made some joke about how maybe our mom's gonna come short on the last part, and he got very upset, but they made up after. Anyway, so I go round and I ask if my mom's around, and he says no, it's just him, and that we really need to talk man to man. I say sure, and he starts talking about how he's always wanted to be a father, etc., and raise a son to call his own. And then he drops this bombshell by saying, now I know I can never replace your father, the man who made you, but it would mean the world to me if you could call me Dad. I'll admit it, I sniggered a little. And then I knew he was serious because he looked like he was about to cry, and he didn't drop it either. I asked if he really meant it, and he got really emotional and started talking about what it means to be a man and how his purpose is to have and provide for a family. And he wants me and my siblings to be part of that family. Like he reiterated, he'll never replace my father. And this did rub me the wrong way a bit, but he's ready to step up and be my dad and provide for and protect me and my siblings. And I'm just sat there thinking, dude, I'm a decade older than you and live in a separate house. I don't need providing for. And even if I did, I don't think a guy a third of my age who works part-time at the hardware store and is into collecting manga is the man to do it. No offense if you are into that, just, I don't know, I was a bit taken aback. I was in shock, so I just said, okay, and he gets emotional again, but in a happy way, talking about how he wants to go camping or go to a baseball game. I don't even like baseball, and how he joined the Lions this year and how he wants to bring me into it too as his boy, which just feels so surreal. Even more so as I'm a Shriner. So all this talk of service and charity isn't the brag he thinks it is, because again, I'm 10 years older than this guy. Well, I ended it by just saying, this has gotten a bit too weird, and I was going home. He got very upset, and I left, called my brother, and he agreed it sounds weird as frick. Later, my mom called me, and she wasn't disappointed, but admitted it's made him very upset and depressed. I told her that if he's embarrassed, he doesn't need to be. I get he's excited about the marriage, and we can just laugh this off as a funny story. She then said that wasn't what he was upset about. He, and she too a bit, is upset about the fact he poured his heart out and I rejected him. She said, yeah, it is a bit kooky, but this is how he proves to himself he's a man. And I guess I was a bit angry and said something like, first off, it's not my job to certify what's between his legs. And second, this doesn't prove he's a man, it just proves he's a nut job. I apologized immediately, but she said she didn't want to hear it and hung up. She called back 10 minutes later, and we apologized, and she begged me to just go along with it until he has some kids to call his own. I won't go too much into the details here, but she sort of let slip they plan to try IVF treatment because she's not ready to give up on being a mom just yet. And while I have my own thoughts about whether or not that's a good idea, I'm not here to litigate on that. We finished up fine, and I reiterated I'd support her, and she agreed that it was definitely a stressful situation for me, but begged me to at least think about it. Which leads me to here. I did think it over, and obviously I'm going to say no. I had a dad, and he died. Rest in peace, Dad. And that's the only dad I've ever needed, I've ever wanted, and I'll ever bestow that title on. I'm not asking if someone's unreasonable or what I should do, more so what I should say. This clearly means a lot to him for some reason, and I deeply love my mom, so I want to try and minimize the damage, especially as we're still so involved in each other's lives, and they live behind me. How can I make it clear to them, as painlessly as possible, that I think this is weird and borderline offensive? I really don't want to rip the Band-Aid off because I fear what it might do to the family. Now for a few comments. One commenter wondered if Phil grew up without a dad because he's giving a weird 1950s energy to this whole thing that feels like he only knows about dads from seeing them on TV. The original poster responded, "Oh no, his dad's still alive. Both his parents are. I've met them. They definitely feel odd about the whole situation, but go along with it for his sake." Another commenter asked if he could compromise and call him Pa or something. The original poster replied, "The thing is, it became apparent it's more than just a name to him. He explicitly wants to do father-son activities with me and my brother with him as the dad, despite the fact we're both older than him." Now, for the post. Commenter, if it's so important to his personal identity to find a girl, have kids with her, and raise them as their dad, it seems like marrying a 58-year-old woman with adult children significantly older than himself is a pretty ineffective way to achieve those life goals. If it's so important to him, he should find someone his own age and make that happen the normal way. It's not your responsibility to make your mom's boy toy feel like a man. You're closer to being his much older brother than his son. Weird. Me and my siblings all think he has issues, talking to girls his own age, and so it led to this. I also get you are supporting your mom, but maybe question her having a kid at 58. Like, does she plan to be around for graduation, marriages, grandkids? It sounds like your mom is having some empty nest issues and is illogically trying to start over. If she got pregnant today, she would be about 77 years old when her kid graduated. Considering she hasn't even started trying yet, that means she will be in her 80s when the kid graduates. That isn't realistic. Also, I have a 5- and 7-year-old and am only 38 years old and already feel tired all the time. I can't imagine what a 58-year-old would feel like. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I don't actually see this ever going ahead. Hence why I'm happy to say, yeah, of course, I'll support you. Because I guess I just can't imagine, push comes to shove, her actually getting the treatment greenlit. I did raise the age stuff, and she just said people live a lot longer these days. I don't know what his end game is here. If it's a mental health problem, or he's trying to create some legal precedent that he intends to exploit later. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to explain, defend, or justify this decision. The end game? I genuinely think he wants to start a family, or at least pretend he's the dad of one. Ever since we met him, it's all he'd ever really go on about and how he needs to be a dad to become a man. Very early on, he asked me if I ever planned to have kids, and I said no. And he got quite taken aback, like a mixture of offense and confusion, and sort of seemed to imply I'm either gay, I am, but shh, or trans because I don't want to be a man then. Commenter, hope it works out in the long run, but I was laughing so hard by the end. Such a crazy situation. I think you should talk with your mom and maybe hang out with her fiancé, but as bros, not some weird dad situation. I have offered this. But every time me and my brother do, he definitely tries to act like the man of the group, or sets us up for more explicit father-son activities, or just talks about how desperate he is to be a father. A personal favorite was a time when he got his phone out and started reading some pearls of wisdom he'd obviously found online. His probable low self-esteem? Yeah, I want to be gentle because I do think he has that warped self-esteem and a lot of other issues. Definitely not all with it. I do know his parents, and they're totally normal, nice people who go along with this for his sake. He's mentioned internet friends and friends from a D&D group, but I've never met them. Me and my siblings have tried talking with his parents, but from the way they've come across, they really don't want to get involved any more than they have to, unfortunately. But thank you. Hopefully the conclusion of this will be gentle. Now for the update. OP. So I told both my siblings and we agreed we'd collectively put our foot down with Phil at our next family dinner next week. Especially after an incident where Phil referred to my brother as sport and asked if he wanted to go see a baseball game with him. Admittedly, I was a bit spurred on by what you all said and got involved, pinging him back with, "Aw, no tickets for me, Daddy." And my brother responded with, "Daddy wants to me all to himself. Hot." And Phil took a few minutes to respond before saying he was shocked, speechless, and disgusted. He then messaged me in private to say he was utterly appalled and that he'd never disrespect his own father the way you boys did. I kind of lost it at this point and said, "Right, that's because you're not my father, Phil. You're a 24-year-old man-child dating my mother. You have no right to my respect, especially not to the respect a father gets." I immediately said sorry, but then blocked his number and left the group chat. Apparently, he sent a similar thing to my brother, who responded with more daddy stuff, and Phil blocked him. Well, that aside, I don't think that family dinner is going ahead. After the original post blew up, it seems someone from his Lions Club found it and reported it to their chair or whatever, and Phil has either been expelled or resigned or in the process of one of the two. He has removed nearly all mentions of the Lions from his social media and no longer mentions being a member, with his last post on it being some cryptic goodbye post where he kind of drones on about what it means to be a man in the modern day and the duty of fatherhood bestowed on all men at birth. Really weird stuff. My mom called me half in a panic, half in a rage after, about the stuff I'd been telling about him before breaking down and saying we need to meet, which we did and got my brother to go over too. I know he has temporarily moved back in with his parents in the next town over, but from my understanding, they still want to go ahead with the wedding. But I think that's more so because they've already spent money on it. When she said she was determined to have more kids. Plural. My brother did step up and asked if she really thought that was a good idea at her age. And I pointed out that assuming she had the baby next year and she lived to 80, they still wouldn't have finished college. She just stammered on about how people live longer these days, before breaking down crying and admitting she's not ready to give up on mothering due to some deep-seated trauma and fears about the family breaking apart that I won't go into for her sake. When we reassured her that we weren't going anywhere, she calmed down and we had a very good, honest conversation where she's agreed to drop the IVF stuff on the grounds that it'd be too expensive and unlikely to get greenlit. But she's still adamant it's scientifically possible, and she should be allowed to do it from an ethical standpoint because she has to win that argument, and has agreed to look into fostering instead. Me and my brother highly doubt anything will ever come of that, so we're not that worried anymore. The very good news is she's also agreed to look into therapy, psychiatric help to deal with her trauma, and we've helped get her in touch with a nice lady in town to unpack all this in a more healthy way. So at least one person is getting the help they need. I have no idea what's happened with Phil or what's going to happen with him, but I did make it clear to my mom that he is not my dad. He's not even my stepdad. I'm not a kid. And he's never going to be either one outside of legal issues. She relented pretty quickly. I think she's finally broken out of her shell at least, and we've agreed that if things go ahead, that's going to be a huge red line though. I don't know if he'll want to be friends with me after all this. Anyway, thanks for the help on the original post, y'all. Edit. Bit of an update as I can't respond to everybody, but I think the marriage is off. Phil has gone AWOL again and has had a huge argument with his family as they've demanded he call off the wedding and date people his own age. This apparently made him snap. Me and my mom have met his mom and older brother, who said Phil is very insecure around girls his own age and has never been able to talk to them, hence his preference. This very deeply upset my mom, and after some begging from all of us, she has agreed to push the wedding back, though she wants to keep dating him. I have no idea where Phil is, though his brother assumes he's couch surfing with his D&D friends, who have been sending me and my brother some not nice messages, because clearly we're just jealous of the attractive older woman hunter. If any of you socially inept folks are reading this, I don't need to chase middle-aged folk because I can talk to boys my own age like a normal person. Peace. Am I the idiot for demanding to see inside my girlfriend's locked room and uncovering her painful past? My girlfriend Amy and I have been together for 5 years, and we are planning on moving in together into her home when my lease is up in 2 months. Our relationship is great. We have arguments, but not often, and we always resolve them like rational people. Amy owns a house she bought about 10 years ago. The city we live in was depressed for a while, where you could buy a big house in a bad neighborhood for cheap, fix it up, and hope the neighborhood would improve, which is luckily what happened to her. It's a big old Victorian house with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Usually, we hung out at my apartment since it was near her work, and I don't have a car to get out to her place, but some weekends here and there, I would spend the night. When my job went remote 5 months ago, I started spending a lot more time at her place. It wasn't until after a month that I realized the one room upstairs has a latch with a padlock on it. I thought it was really weird that it was a padlock and not just a door lock. I mentioned it to her, and she just said, "Yeah, I really don't go in that room or use it." What? I mean, I get that it's a big home, and she lived in it alone for a long time, so she didn't need the space. But to padlock it like that? I asked her what was in it, and she shrugged and said, "Stuff," like it was no big deal. I asked if we could open it, since maybe that would be a good space for my home office, and she said no. Now I'm really curious, and it's actually sort of eating away at me. I don't care what is in the room. I just honestly don't get why it is padlocked shut. That's weird, right? Am I being unreasonable since I'm moving in? I understand the right to privacy, and I wouldn't snoop and couldn't if I wanted to. You couldn't even tell from the outside, since it's on the 2nd floor. I've been sort of paying attention now if she goes in there or not, and I don't think she ever does. I feel like since I'm moving in, I have a right to know, but do I? I don't want to make her open it, but she's so nonchalant about it and changes the subject that my mind keeps running away with me about what could be in there. I'm just wondering what other people think, what I should do, and if I'm being unreasonable wanting to know what is in this padlocked room, or if I don't have a right to. Our relationship is amazing and perfect except for this one really weird issue. Now for a few comments. One commenter humorously speculated about various things that could be in the room, such as 4 children from a previous marriage, a mummified body, or a horse. Another commenter added to the list with ideas like a satanic altar or a portal to another dimension. Then OP replied, "Cats send me into an almost dying asthma attack, so I think if there were 23 of them, I would know. The marijuana farm is very unlikely. She's in law enforcement." Another commenter suggested maybe it's her clutter room, like Monica has from Friends. Someone else said, "This is straight out of a horror movie. You've been together 5 years. Some ominous locked room in the house you plan to move into is a huge no-no. You do have a right to know since you're moving in. Weird, creepy secrets should not be a thing in relationships. Tell her it makes you uncomfortable, and you'd like to know what's in that room before you move in." Then OP replied, "That's a good way to phrase it about it making me uncomfortable. Hopefully she knows I mean it. I'm really big on privacy and respecting privacy boundaries, but this really is just driving me up a wall." Another commenter asked, "I'm enjoying this thread so much. On a serious note though, has your GF experienced any serious trauma that you're aware of?" I ask because I also had a never go in that room. Then OP replied, "Wow, that must have been so scary. I'm glad your daughter is okay. As far as I know, there has been no trauma. But after 5 years, I would have thought I would have heard about it by now, unless she decided not to tell me, which I would respect if it was that traumatic." Now for the 3-day update. I had a long talk with my girlfriend when she got home from work in the morning about the locked room. She tried to blow it off a few times and get out of the conversation until I told her I couldn't move in until she told me what was in the room and I saw it for myself. I told her I didn't care what was in there. After posting here, I was more and more convinced that it was probably guns or something related to her work in law enforcement, as that really did make a lot of sense. Eventually, she just broke down sobbing, big, giant, ugly sobs like I have never seen before. It was pretty shocking. She's not really a crier. It took a good 15 minutes before she could even start forming words that I could understand between giant sobs. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see, and I knew as soon as she started crying that it wasn't a room full of guns or work stuff. Actually, the room is empty. There is nothing in there. Someone had surmised in the comments of the other post that maybe there was some trauma. Unfortunately, they were correct. She was basically a kid at 19 when she bought the house. It was a bad neighborhood, a fixer-upper, and dirt cheap due to the city she lived in and those other factors. She had always been smart with money, so she had a big down payment and was planning on taking the rest of her savings to fix it up. I don't want to get specific with details as it's pretty gruesome and also for privacy, but in her 3rd week living there, she had a home invasion while she was home in that room, and she was attacked. She had no money to move and no family around, so she stayed in the home after buying a security system, locking the door up, and planning to just never unlock it and basically never go in that room again. So there you have it. I seriously was not expecting that at all. And it has been a long week for her. I feel terrible I made her tell me, but she says that she's glad I know now. She never told me before because she didn't want to, which I totally respect. Also, that is when she decided to start a career in law enforcement to help other people. I have actually seen the room, and now I don't feel I ever need to. Am I the idiot for kicking my boyfriend out after he erased my year-long novel notes without warning? I have been working on a novel for about a year. I write every day, even just a sentence. 6 months ago, my college switched to smartboards and put all their whiteboards in the garbage. I grabbed 2 because I have a huge wall space open in my living room. Most of my writing is done on my Google Drive, but I have things like character personalities, names, places, a general timeline, etc. Stuff I want to remember. I used to take photos of it, so I had my ideas with me. I used to write on my lunch break. I stopped doing that because I burn myself out and my writing quality takes a huge dive. Plus, my boyfriend helps me write, and it helps us connect in such a deep way. So I haven't taken a photo in about 3 months. The whiteboards are nice because I can read my notes across the room while I'm sitting in my favorite chair. I got home last night and all of my stuff was erased. It was all train of thought, like I'd come home and jot something down. Handwriting is way more cathartic for me. I had sketches of things in the novel. I'd basically have to go through and remember every single thing on it. I have a lot of it stored in my head or on my Google Drive, but there are some things I'll never get back. But it's the fact he erased it. We don't live together. He told me I've been focusing too much on it and have no time for him. We hang out at my house 5-6 nights a week. I write while he plays video games. It's a good dynamic, and I thought we enjoyed it. We are always laughing, and he helps me with my wording, and I Google stuff to help him in his game. This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If he had brought it up, we could have talked about it. But he went nuclear, and I have no idea why. I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated. We have had one serious argument over his driving. He got better. My family took him on vacation a few weeks ago. We watch his nephew all the time. His family paid for my entire spring semester. We are so much a part of each other's lives, and I feel so hurt and heartbroken. He's my muse, and just the other day we went to the jewelry store to look at rings. My feelings rotate between rage, sadness, confusion, sorrow, anger, everything. How do I even approach this? Last night, I was so upset, I asked him to leave. He hasn't texted. He hasn't called. He hasn't stopped by. I keep typing in questions to ask, but I keep erasing them. Why did you do it? Are you unhappy with our relationship? What did I do? I'm even more heartbroken due to the fact he hasn't called or texted all day. I'm afraid to call him. I don't want to hear him say he thinks we should break up, or he doesn't want to be with me when I'm writing, or just ignore my call. Now for a few important comments. One commenter said, "Holy crap. As a fellow writer, I'd be livid if I were you." This is the first time he's mentioned it bothering him. If this is true, and he jumped straight to sabotage, this is messed up. It's messed up regardless because I'm sure your boyfriend knows how important this work is to you. Like, for him to not try to talk to you about this after 3 years is mind-boggling. Who does this? Text him the dreaded, "We need to talk" message. Ask him when he's available and have him come over to use his words like a goddamn adult. Also, take his key away or change your locks if you don't want to be that upfront about it. He lost his privileges. TBH though, in all sincerity, IDK if this is something I could move past. It comes off as so cruel. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he chose to go into your home when you weren't there because he knew he was doing something wrong. He either knows he messed up, or he feels as though he's in the right, and that's why he hasn't reached out to you. I'm shocked and appalled on your behalf. Another commenter added, "This was an unbelievably messed up way to deal with those feelings. I hate your boyfriend right now. Remember in Little Women when Amy burned Joe's book because Joe wouldn't let her come to the theater with her? That was pretty messed up, but ultimately, Amy was a child and she would grow up and be better. Your boyfriend can't do better than the most hated March sister. He's showing you that when he doesn't get his way, he will punish you and destroy the things you care about. This isn't an isolated incident. It's an important piece of information about his character. If he comes back with a massive apology and a plan for how he's going to deal with his feelings in the future in a non-destructive way, then maybe I'd say it's worth a conversation about continuing this relationship." Then the original poster responded, "I actually haven't read Little Women, but I ordered it for my Kindle. It's just so out of the blue. Part of me wonder if there's something going on with him beyond what he said. I don't know." Another commenter shared, "This is really messed up. As another fellow writer, I honestly would have broken down. That's so much work just down the drain just because you wanted to get your work completed. It's ridiculous. Honestly, if it were me, I'd have to fist fight the guy after I've stopped crying over destroyed work." Going with what the other commenter said, definitely take his key away. There's no doghouse or "you can get this back when you earn it back" about it. I've personally been in this situation where I've had my old novella notebooks used in a grill fire, and with truth, I've never accepted the apologies. The person isn't even a friend to me anymore. Not saying you should dump him or break ties with him in general. Oh, not at all. However, I do say there should be a conversation about the relationship in here somewhere. If he can't handle you being immersed in something you've put years into, something you love, he's not ready to date any type of creator, to be quite honest. It's scary that he honestly thought that destroying anything that looked remotely important was the best thing to do in the situation. But when you regain yourself, try and retrace your steps now that he's hiding from you. Try and rebalance your world building. Some new things might even come out of it. Keep your head up, friend, and hopefully you can pull back some information and crawl back from there. It'll be difficult, but you can do it. The original poster then added, "He stood there and he seemed so, I don't know, proud, happy, vindicated. I've had my jaw drop once before in my entire life. To the ventriloquist girl who was on America's Got Talent, lol. I didn't know it was an actual feeling of shock/awe. It did last night right before I blanked out and woke up face down on my bed asking him to leave." Now for the 3-month update. It's been about 3 months since I made my post. The night I made my post, I went to a friend's house and she ordered a pizza, we got ice cream, and a bottle of wine. She's a straight shooter, takes a neutral approach, and she gives solid relationship advice, so I felt comfortable talking to her about everything. She couldn't figure out why he'd done it. We went over how he and I hung out, how much he seemed to care about me, how we looked into each other's eyes, but it also revealed a lot of hesitation on my part. I'm a positive person and tend to forgive faults or overlook them. I suspect it's some sort of coping method from my childhood. We had some unresolved issues I think he was holding in, but when I'd bring them up, he'd just get kind of salty and go, "It's fine, I don't care anymore." But he'd bring them up in arguments. I didn't realize how toxic it was. That same night, I told him I was coming over the next day to talk about things. I told him I'd be over around 11, and the only thing he texted me was "okay," which I didn't respond to. I went over to his house at 11, and he was still asleep. He got upset when I woke him up. It took the wind out of my sails. On a good day, I cry if something upsets me, but I was so angry and heartbroken I couldn't even think. I left without saying a word to him. He didn't follow me. On my way out, I went to the kitchen and took my house key from his key ring. I drove home in a daze, collected all his things, put them in a box on my porch, and texted him to come get them. He said, "What the hell? That's fine. I'll come by later," and pick them up. I went out with a few girlfriends. We got day drunk and had some amazing food. It made me feel better, but when I got home and his things were gone, I was heartbroken. I never texted him. He never texted me. I got absolutely no closure, and even though people say closure is nonsense, I've had the hardest time moving on. It's been 3 months, and I still cry in the shower sometimes. Even though I broke up with him, I still feel so confused and heartbroken. I never figured out why he did what he did. I likely never will, and I miss his help and companionship. I'd love to come here and say I finished my book, but I haven't written much since. I can't get into my characters' heads anymore. There's a feeling of loneliness and grief, and that sort of helped me create a better outline. But I can't write about my characters. The other day, I went to the bookstore to study. I ended up looking at books related to time travel and found one that has thousands of positive reviews. My novel is science fiction, and I've been trying to think of how to incorporate time travel, so it kind of lined up perfectly. It turns out a lot of my ideas mirror theoretical physics. It's eerie. I've never taken physics or read about it. Suddenly, string theory makes sense, cosmology makes sense. I'm blown away, and it makes me feel so weird that so much of my plot has been studied so in depth. The book has lit a fire under me. Reading more about everything makes me so excited, and it's helped me really flesh out my plot. I can't put it down and read 20 or so pages a night. I haven't actually made time to sit and read a book for years. I always have a notebook with me now, so I write my ideas down. I haven't written about my characters yet, but my passion is back. My plot is making more sense. Now I don't care much about how we broke up. I'm not confused. I sometimes get sad at night or during the day, or if I go out and make prolonged eye contact with a guy. I haven't thought about dating, and I'm still too hurt to pursue it. But every day I move on a little bit more. I wanted to thank everyone who gave me advice. I forgot about my post until just now, and when I went back through to read it, it made me realize how seriously messed up it was, and it gave me closure. Thank you.